What are we seeing?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. Amazing. I don't like how on Zoom that you can't see what you're seeing. Okay. Okay, hey, everyone, here we go. All right, Anne, take it away to start with. You're muted, though.
Thank you. You guys can tell we are used to using Google Meet more so than Zoom, but hey, happens. So welcome everybody. I'm Ann Watts. I'm the manager for the community access team here at Division of Housing, and just wanted to give you a quick overview of what our team does, because it is more than just vouchers.
Oh, what's this?
Oh,
There we go. Oh, come on. There we go.
okay. And I love that cat graphic that you found for that page, Courtney, too.
Yeah, cat team. Here we go, guys. Peeking down there.
It's a theme.
Yep.
All right. So obviously we're here today. Most people are going to be interested in the voucher program, the state housing voucher that we provide to people who are exiting institutions, primarily nursing homes, although we are working on expanding that a little bit in the future. In the near future, we will hopefully be able to start providing some vouchers to people with developmental disabilities to help keep them from having to use the DD waiver from Medicaid and allow them to live in the community instead of in a group home or host home. So that is one exciting future thing going on that we'll also be focusing on with those vouchers. And then I'm going to hop down quickly to Section 811, Project Rental Assistance. And that is a project-based program that we contract with specific developments, also to serve the same basic populations that we serve with the CAT state housing voucher. And that's just an FYI, because as voucher agencies, you guys are not actually involved in managing that 811 project-based assistance, but wanted you to be aware that it's out there. And then the other rental assistance type program that we work with is HOPWA, Housing for People with AIDS. And we contract directly with the Colorado AIDS Project or CHN. What does that stand for again?
Colorado Health Network.
Housing Network, yes. And they run a TBRA program and pair that with supportive services. So Courtney's engaged in all three of those. And then beyond Courtney, we also work a lot in home modifications. So we partner with the Department of Healthcare Policy and Finance, HCPF, our state Medicaid agency, to help manage their benefit for home modifications for people with disabilities. And that's developmental as well as physical. Variety of folks are eligible for that program. And completely independent of Medicaid, we have a home modification tax credit that we administer that people can actually, anybody who's under the income limit, which is in the neighborhood of 150,000, it's a little bit higher than that now. Anyone under that income limit that has a disability and wants to make modifications to their home to make it more accessible to them, they can get up to a $5,000 credit against their state income taxes. So if you or anyone you know wants to make up to $5,000 worth of accessibility improvements to your home, you have a disability and you pay state taxes, you may be able to take advantage of that program. So wanted to get that information out there to folks. Also, finally, we have a host home inspection program. So folks with developmental disabilities who live in this kind of a setting or similar settings, we are actually in implementing a statewide program to inspect all of those homes periodically using the housing quality standards, the HQS model. So that is the CAT team at a glance, and I will turn it back to Courtney to talk more about our state housing voucher program, which is what you guys all work on with us. So thank you for that. And thank you, Courtney.
All right, here we go. Okay. So the CAT State Housing Voucher Program, it actually originated, and I'm going to be I want to look at this screen that has my camera on it, but my PowerPoint is on this one. So sorry that I'm not looking at you, but I am looking at you. If that makes sense. So the CAT-B program originated as a partnership with HCPF, as Ann had mentioned prior, the Department of Healthcare Policy and Finance, and it's the state Medicaid provider. And it also was in partnership with their Money Follows the Person program and Targeted Case Management Transition Services program. The CAT-B program allows for a variety of housing choices. It is also allows for a range of supportive services that are funded by other sources. And it's in response to the needs for those individuals that are institutionalized or are extremely hard to reach. Again, it is funded by the state of Colorado, so it is a state housing voucher program, and it's to help our Colorado Medicaid applicants and members transition out of long-term care facilities and into independent living by providing housing vouchers for those people. This is also in collaboration with Brothers Redevelopment, and they provide the housing navigation services. The state housing voucher, so again, it's a partnership, and it was implemented in 2019, and it is a permanent part of the Medicaid state plan. The individuals that are being referred to this program must be eligible for a home and community-based services waiver. And this program, as I'm sure all of you know, it has several nuances. It's guided by the HCV program and their regulations, but there are, of course, differences. One is that it's state funded, state money. It's similar to OHI's SHV and our programs, and it's primarily tenant-based. Like Ann had mentioned previously, the only project-based program that we have in the CAT team is the Section 811. The priority is people exiting institutions. So those that would be exiting into homeless due to their disability or just because they have nowhere else to go. But it can also serve those, like I said, that are at risk. This is our organizational structure. I tried to get the whole thing, but we have changed so much over the past few months that it is wildly inaccurate. So I just kind of did this a little bit, and that was a little difficult for me on this as well. So bear with me. Like Ann had mentioned, she's up here at the top, our manager. Here's me. And then Tiara Powell is also, she's the CAT and S811 program specialist. So she's the housing coordinator for those programs and anyone that we administer in-house at DOH. We have Naomi, who's home mod, and Ken, who is also home mod program specialist, and Ben. Our partner agencies, so we, as you all know, the Division of Housing is a statewide housing authority, and we utilize you as partner agencies, thank you, to administer our vouchers across the state for us. The other partner agencies besides you all include homeless program agencies, intellectual, behavioral, and developmental agencies, independent living centers, outside housing authorities, and also kind of some private landlords and things like that. Collaboration with our transition coordination management partners. That is a tongue twister. So this is about the transition services. DOH and HCPF partner with the contracted agencies outside, and they assist in facilitating the transition of the applicants from skilled nursing facilities or SNFs or assisted living, whatever you want to call them, to independent living. The transition coordinators, or TCs, act as a liaison and a support system for the applicant to guide them through the transition process. As we all know, the transition process can be quite intimidating. Roles and responsibilities. I just do want to mention that a lot of these are kind of wordy, but I just want you all to have as much information as possible, but I'm going to obviously tell you as well. So the roles and responsibilities in this program is obviously with us, DOH, that's me and Tiara, and we are the application reviewers. We provide program information, updates, TA, training, customer service, and we assist with any questions and concerns. DOH again, Anne and myself are contact for escalated issues, the review of terminations and denials. So those need to be submitted to us when they are being considered. Reporting and funding issues, or conversations, things like that. And we are also the go-to to implement the program rules and any updates. Partner agencies and housing coordinators, they administer the housing vouchers and they process moves, inspections, household changes, all the awesome things that everyone does. They are the primary contact for the housing individual and for the landlord, for the TC, for anyone that is related to the individual's housing. They're going to be their, sorry, I just got distracted. They're going to be the point of contact. Yes, Anne, you raised your hand.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to clarify for the, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the case of terminations or denials, our local housing agencies are gonna refer them to their SPOCs like they normally would. And then the SPOCs will take care of reaching out to me or Courtney to actually review them. So you guys won't need to remember to come to us for some people and your SPOCs for other people. Just go to your SPOCs and take it from there.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
And then the housing coordinator is going to be, the primary contact, of course. They're going to work directly with the tenant. This is a very wordy slide. This is basically a rundown of what the role of the transition coordinator is. As we can see, it's a huge slide. They have a lot of responsibilities. Basically, what this runs down as is that it's the collaboration from the very beginning of their transition to, we would prefer all the way to their annual recertification, but unfortunately, sometimes due to funding issues, that isn't able to happen. But one of the main points that I do want to highlight here is that they need to ensure, ensure the lease documents are submitted to you all as housing coordinators for payment processing. Okay, that's not something that, if you have a moment and you want to reach out, that's fine. But we do, as we know, we have a lot of participants and applicants, and so it is important, and it is a responsibility of the transition coordinators to help us out and kind of help facilitate that. So please keep that in mind, that it is their responsibility to submit it to you. But if you want to reach out, that's fine as well, kind of just to make sure that the client doesn't get penalized. It is also the transition coordinator's responsibility to notify the housing coordinator of the client's discharge when they actually discharge from the facility. A lot of times we're not aware that they discharge, or for some reason they haven't discharged. So that's why it's important to have the close communication and collaboration with the transition coordinators as housing coordinators, kind of in the interim between when the person is referred and briefed to when they've actually leased up and discharged. And then one of the most important ones here is that they need to assist their participants in reporting income changes within the 10-day timeframe requirement. We're running into a lot of unfortunate repayment agreements, and so this is extremely important that they do report this so that we can avoid those. The action alert, I will be sending this out here shortly. It is about the repayment agreements. So effective August 1st, 2022, which is basically going to be almost immediately, repayment agreements will be required for all CAT V participants who fail to report any income changes required. Please follow the DOH processes for repayment agreement calculations and reporting, and of course, contact your SPOC for questions. It's effective August 1st. So if you discover anybody who has not reported their income, regardless of, unfortunately, the situation, a repayment agreement is going to be required. Referral process. So referral process is pretty simple for the most part. The applicant engages in the assessment for eligibility through options counseling, and that's going to be with the assistance of Dr. Cog. The housing application is completed with the applicant, and that's when the transition coordinator steps in, is when they're completing the housing application, and it's submitted to the CAT box is what we kind of call it, but it's the CAT email box for approval by Housing Navigator, HCPF, and us. So then we review it, and pending obviously the correct documentation and submission, they're either approved or we respond and say, hey, we need something. Once we approve it, then the applicant is assigned to the partner agency. So that's where you all come in. Then we will send you all the documents that are required, so you guys have a complete file, and you will complete an agency briefing. So those are typically scheduled 2 weeks out, and it is your and the transition coordinator's responsibility to schedule that to ensure that you guys can both make it, that you all can just make it. And then, of course, after the applicant completes the briefing, then they start looking for housing. This is a flow chart of kind of how everything looks. This is really where it starts. As we receive the application, we look at it, and then we assign it to you all. You schedule the briefing, housing search, unit located, RAFTA, and then obviously you guys all know this, but upon passing the inspection, we'll give the approval. One thing is make sure that you all are giving explicit approval after the HQS is completed, because sometimes we have run into where some individuals will have moved in before the inspection was completed, and so we obviously cannot pay until the inspection is completed and in pass status. So please make sure that when you receive a RAFTA or you know, a request to approve a unit, that you do make sure to explicitly say, you know, this unit is approved for, and not exact those words, but make sure to just say it. Excuse me, this is a lot of talking from y'all. Then the TC and the landlord obviously have to send you guys the information to process in Elite. That's going to be within 60 days so that we can get the HAP contract completed. The moves processed, and then the applicant transitions into the community. So the application and eligibility requirements are, they must have a verified disability, which means you have to have the VOD, which is the verification of disability document. For the CAP program, it does need to be completed by somebody with a license number. These documents we will have sent you with it, so you won't necessarily need to you know, kind of look for these. These are all things that we'll have included in the packet that we send you, but just so you're all aware that these are the requirements for this program. The priorities for it are, of course, the CAT or transition services participants. Those are going to be the ones that are exiting out of nursing facilities, institutions, etc. That's the first and second. And then the third one is going to be those that are at risk of being institutionalized. So they're chronically homeless, they're on HCBS or applying for HCBS. And HCBS is the home and community-based services. And 4, they are homeless or at risk of homelessness. The application requirements are pretty straightforward as far as it goes to align with DOH requirements. They have to submit the application, and it needs to be completed and dated within the last 60 days. They need to submit their acceptable identity documents, and they need to be at or below extremely low income level. And of course, we run debts owed on them. So we have to ensure that they don't owe any money to us or another public housing authority. Voucher orientation or briefing, they're used interchangeably. It is mandatory, of course. The applicant does not have a voucher until they attend the orientation. All documents are signed and returned. So even though they may have signed everything, they don't actually have it until we get it, because we need to have it in order to see that it is, you know, actually their thing. A representative from the transition agency is required to be physically present and on video to assist their participant. They don't have to remain on video the whole time, but they do need to at least, turn it on so that you can see the individual that you need to brief, as well as a transition coordinator there to assist them with completing the documents and answering any questions that they might have. Again, the briefing paperwork has to be signed and submitted directly afterwards. Failure to submit the briefing paperwork will result in lease signing, delay holds, not having a voucher, all those amazing things. So please ensure, that you do stress at the briefing that these documents need to be submitted right away. Voucher issuance, 120 days, same as regular voucher or regular voucher programs. Again, it is the tenant and the TC's responsibility to track the term of the voucher and communicate with you all should you need extensions or they need extensions or whatever have you. The request for extension regulation is the same as HCV as well. More than 120 days, the RA can be submitted. And it needs to be verified by a knowledgeable professional. I know that we have a waiver in place right now for those extensions. However, if the request for extension is submitted after the expiration date, the voucher will expire. So extensions are not guaranteed. Here's a couple updates on reasonable accommodations for an increased payment standard, because we do have the individuals in our program do have a less amount while they're in the nursing facility, so they have an allowance. They only received $93.17 for 2022, and that's only if they're on SSDI. If they're on regular SSI, they only receive $30. So please remember that when you're calculating the 5/8, to use these amounts when initially calculating, then process a new one or calculate a new one with their full income so that they know what they'll be paying when they discharge. The CAP program, we're able to approve an automatic higher payment standard at new admission if the tenant's regular income is enough to support paying up to 40%. So their full income, can they pay up to 40% of the gross? Then we can go ahead and just approve an automatic payment standard increase. A written RA is not required, and you can just notify your SPOC or me or Tiara. Another one is that as a result of the House Bill 21-1054 becoming law, verification of lawful presence is no longer required. So it says for head of household in the state housing voucher program. Apologies, I missed it. That is for any member of the household. The CAP program has waived the birth certificate requirement. It is not required. Lease up process. So the RAFTA is of course required to be submitted, and it's the transition coordinators. We say tenant and landlord, but the transition coordinator is going to be the one that's in contact with you. So it really is their responsibility to get you all the RAFTA to ensure approval before the voucher expiration, or of course submit their request for extension. Inspection. Obviously the unit must pass inspection before the lease is signed. If an agency inspector is unable to physically inspect a unit due to extenuating circumstances, the CAP program allows for the HQS form to be completed in the interim. Okay, this is a specific form directly related to CAT, and it allows for us to, and you all have seen it actually, it's the documentation that we used during COVID from, it was the HCV, but we used it during COVID so that we could get HQSs completed and try not to hold people up. However, a physical inspection must be completed within the next 30 days. So this is only in extenuating circumstances. Inspector's sick, you can't get out there, conflicts, whatever have you. That is fine. You can use this document. Please make sure that you let the landlord know that they are responsible. I mean, for being truthful. I feel like that would kind of be a given, but if not, then when you go out and inspect, if there are failed items, we will recoup that money that we paid on the client's behalf. So please keep that in mind. The lease up packet, so the landlord packet we created It has a little welcome letter on the front. It kind of explains everything about the program from, kind of between the landlord, the TC, and you all. And in the packet, it consists of, the RAFTA, the security deposit form, landlord obligations, W-9 EFT, and the lead-based paint. So all forms everybody's seen probably a million times. We just wrapped it up in a nice, neat little package with some directions for landlords on it. So the lease signing process, again, it is the responsibility of the landlord and the transition coordinator to provide the housing agency and you all with the lease for processing. We have a lot of people out there that are on vouchers, and it's difficult sometimes to keep track of who submitted what. Without obviously the signed lease or HAP contract, we will not be releasing any payments. We will not honor the lease date for paperwork submitted outside of the 60-day window. The landlord or the transition coordinator may be responsible for taking care of any back payment if it's after the revised HAP contract is after the effective date. Okay, so that is something that we run into a lot and we receive some pushback on, but unfortunately that's just not something that we're able to be flexible on. And we need to ensure that documents are getting signed in the correct amount of time. Participants are responsible for their portion of the rent effective at lease signing and then the first of the month after that. So just because they're not occupying the unit doesn't mean that they're not responsible for their rental portion. Obviously, if they have zero rental portion, that's one thing, but if they have some sort of rental portion, they need to be paying it directly to their landlord as they would if they were occupying the unit. Actions for new admission and 90-day interim. This is a little, we've been asking you all to do this, but I'm actually making a slide about it in the webinar so that there's something to refer back to. So again, for 2022, the CAP participants only received $93.17 for SSDI and only $30 for SSI. Please use this amount when inputting their income at new admission. So these lower amounts. When that is processed at the same time, please go in and do an interim at 90 days for their full income so that both of those actions can then be approved by your SPOC and letters will go out. And that way they know what they're looking at paying when they discharge and start getting their full amount. Now, if for some reason somebody doesn't discharge within 3 months, it's likely that they'll get their mail and they will let you know, or the TC will let you know, because it's going to be an increased amount and they'll either say, hey, I'm not getting this, or you won't hear from them and they'll be okay with it because they've discharged. Again, that's another reason why it's important for the transition coordinator to be in communication with you about discharge so that you can also kind of have a pulse on, the 3-month interim. So please begin to do that. And that's going to be effective it should be effective retroactively, but we're moving forward. So please make sure to do that moving forward. Do 2 actions every time that you are doing a lease up in Elite. Okay, and that's only for the CAP program, just for us. So an applicant will graduate from the transition program and the TCs will ensure that the housing coordinator and everybody is aware. So they will need to make sure that the client has your phone number, your contact information, support services, everything like that if they were set up. The TC should also ensure that participants know who to contact for these things. So food stamps, Medicaid renewals, health services, etc. Most of the programs unfortunately don't have a warm handoff or anybody as kind of like a liaison as far in detail as the TCs go. And so that's why it's extremely important for the TCs just to keep in communication, because a lot of times when they stop providing services to them, they won't know who to contact or anything like that. So then they have no food, or they risk losing their housing or health services or whatever. So that's just why it's extremely important, the relationship between the TCs and you all and us, so that we can maintain a good relationship and get these people housed and continue to be housed and be successful. So obviously, in the community, we definitely recommend that tenants kind of get in the habit of calling you all. I know that that sounds like, I don't want any more phone calls, I don't want any more contact, anything like that. I get it. I know we're all overwhelmed, but it's just to familiarize yourself and them with you, so that they know you're a real person. You know, you're not just somebody on the end of a letter or on the end of a computer or something like that. So it's just important that they get in touch with you and kind of know that you're there. We do encourage you all to highlight the importance of keeping an eye on their mail and responding to any correspondence from us and you all. Obviously the annual recert is mandatory, and if they don't complete it, then it results in potentially losing their housing. We are flexible, but we just, you know, getting things on time is much better. And they should be contacting you or their supportive services team if they need assistance in completing things. Again, success in the community, the interim, always, I do this ad nauseum in my briefings, and I'm sure people hate it, but always remind the tenant to report any changes in their income to the housing coordinator in writing within 10 days of the change. Okay, so I'm gonna put that again, always remind them, because if there's one thing that people lose their housing for, and I think we all know this, is failure to report income. And that's such an easy thing to report, that, you know, it's unfortunate that is the reason. So please just try to kind of drill that into their heads. And obviously the failure to report any changes will result in having to pay us back. Adding applicants to the house, or adding members to the household, they can do this. They just need to go through the proper channels. They can't be having their mom, brother, cousin, sister, adult, whatever, living with them. So please, when you do the briefing, remind them that it's only for them. It is only their voucher and the people that are approved on their application, which is going to be the person, if they're above 18, that is at the briefing with them. If they want to add anyone, they have to get either the landlord approval and the housing coordinator approval first. They will be subject to a criminal background check. They must be income eligible. And then moving anybody in, of course, could result in a loss of the voucher. So please just make sure to let them know those two things are very important. Moving, they can move, obviously, we know this. They just must follow their lease requirements. So some lease requirements say 60-day notice, some say 30. It's just a matter of kind of whatever the lease requirements are. So we definitely encourage them to review the lease, of course, but review it for more than just a scan, right? So that they know if they want to move or when they want to move, that they follow the correct procedures and protocols. Failure to give any notice could also result in a loss of housing assistance. So there are circumstances where a tenant has to return to the nursing facility, and it is the transition coordinator's responsibility to notify both you and the landlord right away when this happens. Because at that point, we need to start tracking, or we all need to start tracking how many days this person's going to be out of unit. This is the same process as for our HCVs. So 120-day RA, and then over that up to 180 days is, usually the last that we'll pay, because then it appears that the individual is not living in the unit. We're not going to pay on a unit that somebody's not living in, or they may not be able to return based on, health or whatever. Moving out without it completing the entire lease term, the landlord may require a lease break fee. We don't provide that. Division of Housing does not cover this. One thing that I do suggest sometimes is that if a person does have to leave their unit permanently or even in the interim, but they're not going to be in their unit for a long while. And they still have half a lease left or 3 months or whatever. I definitely suggest that a reasonable accommodation is submitted on behalf of them to see if maybe the landlord would do a mutual rescission of lease instead of having them actually break the lease. And this is only for times when they return to the SNF or the hospital or something like that, something that is, completely out of their control, anything like that. And so that's just what we suggest. I suggest, and obviously that's going to be back in the landlord's court. Okay, so one of the misconceptions is that the applicant discharged into the community and the property says that they owe money. That's true. They are in a legally binding contract. Once they sign the lease, it is their unit and they are required to pay for it. It is the utilities and the lease portion as well, the rental portion. So if you need please contact, if you need clarification on anything that, the property says or anything like that. I know sometimes that it can be a little bit confusing between the TC and the property. So just make sure that you guys are all in collaboration and communication, and that you ensure that you let the client know that they are responsible right at the beginning after they sign the lease. Updates and reminders. Birth certificate no longer required for Cat B. Okay, so don't even need to worry about it. You will have all of the documentation that you need when we send it to you after the agency assignment. Okay. Any documents that you obviously acquire after for additions or whatever, you're going to follow the same rules as you normally would. But in the beginning, we are definitely going to send you everything that you need and that we require. So you're all good to go in the beginning. You can just set up the briefing and get those briefing documents completed and out to them. Landlord or transition agency may be responsible for payment prior to the revised HAP effective date if it's outside the window, the 60-day window, of course. So that's another important kind of aspect to keep in mind, that they do need to be submitting this. So I know if you want to track it or if you have the ability to track it, then that's fine. But that is their responsibility to ensure that the documents are submitted. Repayment agreements are required 8/1/22. So please make sure that you are watching for those and completing those accordingly. The CAP program is able to approve a automatic higher payment standard if the individual has regular income enough to pay up to the 40%. And applicants can sign up for, maybe you all know this, maybe you don't. Applicants can sign up for this My Account at socialsecurity.gov, and they can just print their letters as they need them. So I know that some people get kind of hung up like, oh, it's going to take forever for me to get my 60-day or my notice that's dated within 60 days or whatever. They can sign up for this account and then they can just print it out as they need it. Sometimes there are some hiccups to it. They require a PIN. Then people ask to have it sent in the mail, and so they still have to kind of wait on Social Security to send them the PIN. But regardless, after you get it all set up, it's much easier. They can print out everything. They can look things up, change things, etc. Okay, questions? Let's see.
Courtney, there were a couple questions in the Q&A that people had that I was kind of leaving for you to answer. I can read those to you if you want.
Okay.
One was just asking about repayment agreements, that they're not required for SHV, and just wondering why they were for the CAT vouchers.
So that's just because we have determined that we are actually not getting the documents returned, and the rental portions updated, and then sometimes we can go 6 or 8 months without noticing anything, and then unfortunately we have, you know, lost all of that money that we weren't aware of, and we've now decided that we can't just keep letting those kind of go, because it is going to turn into a funding issue, unfortunately. So
Perfect. And then one, or maybe two others. Somebody had said that they have had new CAT people come to their agency with the briefing certificate already signed, and they haven't done the briefings. Are there instances where that does occur? Or should they be conducting the briefings?
oh yeah, no. You all must conduct the briefing. A transition coordinator is never allowed to conduct a briefing. That's going to be an HCV, a state regulation. We as state individuals, and you as contractors, of course, are the ones that are going to be able to provide the briefing and should be completing it, because you are the administrators. We're the administrators. So if you are running into any situations where that's happens, please let us know right away, because that's something that we need to address. And I guess one thing that may be a little bit confusing is that it's possible, I guess, that they had it completed by us or by someone else, and then they decided to start looking in your area, and then we've assigned them that way. So that might be a possibility of confusion, but it should always, the briefing packet and certification should, if they're assigned to you, it needs to have one of your agency signatures on it that you completed it, because otherwise they don't have a voucher. I hope that answered that.
Perfect. Thank you. And I don't know if we want to give people a few more minutes if anybody had any questions. Let's see. Are there any resources for a coordinator to use to get SSI info on CAT people?
So you mean like, because we don't run EIB?
I think that's, yeah.
Okay. No, unfortunately. Yeah, we only HCV does EIB as far as that goes. We only do debts owed. And it's because that's just kind of making sure that they don't owe any money to anybody else. But basically, unfortunately, it's going to be the letter. Yeah.
Right. And then Heather with the Independence Center said, we were given a phone number for clients to call to do a briefing. I've tried and no one has called me back. Do you know anything about the briefing number? I haven't heard of that one.
Do you mean like when you send out the GVite or the Google Vite or whatever? Because sometimes because it's basically, once the clients are assigned to you all as coordinators, they're yours. You choose to schedule the briefing. However, I'm just giving a number where people call. Oh, okay. So Heather, you must be referring to you're a TC, right? Am I missing that? So if you can't do it, then I would contact the housing coordinator right away and reach out to them and tell them that you can't get in, because that way at least then they can have record that you've contacted them and you're trying to get in, and then they need to figure out kind of what's going on with the briefing number. If they need to cancel that one and resend out a new number, that's something that I've had to do before. Sometimes Google's weird and it just won't let people in. So I would just say, just keep in contact with the housing coordinator. send them emails, call them, leave them voicemails, because if they're in a briefing with, with a couple other people, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to respond right away. And so if you send them an email or call them, then at least it'll be kind of a timestamp that you tried to contact them to get in. Yes, Catherine?
Oh, yeah. And then there was one by Rosalie about Lynn. That's all right. You can call me Catherine.
I mean, you're not, I know, but.
I'm afraid that the EIV is only for housing choice vouchers, and that's because we submit. You might hear us sometimes talking about submitting PIC to HUD. Is we submit all of our actions to HUD. These are HUD vouchers. That's how our HCV participants get into the EIV system. So only the housing choice voucher participants are we able to access EIV. Our other state vouchers and PSH, we have access to DOL reports, the FSR, Family Support Registry, CBMS, but I'm afraid not EIV. So it would make life a lot easier if they were, but I'm afraid that's not anything we're able to do.
We would love to be able to do that, but unfortunately, like Lynn said, can't.
Right.
Anything else?
Doesn't look like it. I'm gonna.
Man, you have been like on it. Look at all